Izwe to Africa yonke, like power, no sharing, amanda, awethu, amanga, awabo. So it's 2 days after an incredible demonstration of resistance and organizing capacity with the people, during the people. Artisan Revolution happened on Wednesday, marking 7 days since our brother Zukiswa was killed by Peega's thugs, and felt like so many people that there's something that is not being done about police violence and brutality in this country. Just the ease at which, the ways in which we organize, because there's no shortage of that. Black people have been organizing against our dispossession, against our suffering and indignity since time immemorial. But just at the hint of a tear gas, rubber bullets, even live ammunition, those efforts fall. And so we lost a brother, whether he was protesting, whether he was a student, whether he had a master's in children or any of that. Someone died because of the recklessness and complete disregard for Black people in this country, where you can go one day, leave your children and wife to go get health care, and then you die because police decided you are too Black to walk out of a clinic, or you are too Black to exercise your rights of protest. And so something, at some point, Mthokozisi Ndumba must be the last. If Nathaniel Julius was not, if the 424 before him in this year alone, between 2019, 2020, 2021, were not, how do we ensure that Mthokozisi Ndumba becomes the last person to succumb to police violence? 34 Black men died and the country moved on. And it is, the tendency, and the state relies on the fact that things will trend for 1 week, and then these Black people will have other problems and forget and move on. And part of the intervention, I suppose, was to say that actually, at some point, we must fight back. At some point, how we think about what the ground is, what our resistance looks like, needs to be rethought. And more than that, this is not a student struggle, right? This is a Black struggle. It's about the community, it's about our parents, it's about the very police that are killing us, who also themselves cannot afford to take their children to schools, right? So we are engaged in that process on Wednesday, and we had a bunch of incredible, I call them magicians, because I don't think there's better artists in the world than the artists we have in this occupied Azania. But they heeded the clarion call in the space of 2 days, literally, and we protested. We weren't grooving, it was not a concert, it was not anything outside of that organizing, fighting back. And one of our protesters, Ayanda Mabulu, was subsequently then arrested. They literally waited for him to be away from the masses or whoever they thought was, so they were checking. And cornered the car, arrested him, and the charges, which the brilliant Black brother by here, education to us means service to Africa, the attorney, Patu, will tell us more about the circumstances around the arrest. But primarily we are here with Upatu, myself, Tony, and Musa to do, I guess, so the media ran with the story. Patu will unpack more about what the story was, but they saw a gap and they did what South African media does best, which is vilify Black people. And so now the narrative that's going around is that students are carrying rifles and AK-47. That is why SEPs must respond to our calls with bullets and tear gas. and we are just wanting to rewrite that narrative. A couple of media houses who were running with the story, we had made invites that they must come through for this briefing. They didn't, but media never built us, media will never break us. We are doing this live to just have a public account, because it would be reckless and irresponsible not to, especially knowing that they are running with this thing to protect themselves on one accord, to build their case for why they respond so brutally to Black people. Because now they're wanting to say that, you know, artistic expression, the spirit, that spirit, they are making it something very ugly, and it cannot be on our watch. So I'm going to ask Phathu to just explain to us from a legal perspective the circumstances around what happened, the case itself, and then we're going to go into a conversation from an artist perspective, as well as a political perspective, I suppose. Ooh. And hopefully we won't keep you for too long, about 20-25 minutes. Phathu, thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the viewers also.
Stewart voice.
Yes. So yeah, as we are and here, I like the fact that even this media briefing is in studio, I presume. So it's in studio for artists, and then I was told as a lawyer about the art show which was happening, the one that you said you consider it as groovy rather than
protest.
Yeah, protesting. So yeah, when it comes to the case itself of one of your artists who was, I would say, who was legally abused by those who think they have power, because there are people who think they have powers, and then who think they can also misuse the power that they have. So, and then, yes, like you brief that he was arrested after he performed whatsoever at concert that he was attending. But when I consult with him, I found out that no, Ayanda was not arrested, but his nephew, together, yeah, his nephews were arrested. So while they were taking the artwork to studio, so I don't know anything of gun. So because there's nothing that I've seen which was described to me as a gun or a rifle. I just only saw in the news and then read it in the news. But as the person who was consulting and dealing with the matter, I don't know of any gun. I only know of an artwork which was declared to be an art, yeah, but to clearly, and then even if you can see it, it's something which have art itself. The way how it's structured, it's an artwork. Everyone can see. It's not even a rifle which works. So even the things of saying that there was ammunition and stuff like that, it was just a lie. Because even the pictures which was taken by the so-called police, they even failed to show the ammunition with that artwork. Because it's artwork. Obviously, it doesn't even have ammunition. So they only take the picture to mislead the public and then to create a narrative, like you say, to say students are being supplied with rifles and stuff like that so that they can fight back police. There's no war that students are against police by students. This is a simple struggle. It's a call from the student to their parents, to the whole community to say no. This is our educational system, which us as a Black people, most of us will not afford. So can't we have a system whereby everyone will be covered? That's the call that students are placing in the community. And then that's why some of us who understand them better, because some of us, if ever, we were not somewhere, somehow, getting legal, not legal assistance, social assistant and a financial assistant from the community itself, and then some other companies will not be at school. So it means someone like me will not be here. Yeah. So now, if ever we can have that system, which the students are calling for, to say no, let's have free education for all. So then now when we see there's some other people who are calling the shot, and then who are saying, no, we cannot give these people a free education for simple reasons. I hope the guy who's joining us politically will address that. Because that's political also. I don't want to touch.
Of course, no, you address.
I don't want to touch more in the politics, but you know, it's easy. It's easy to govern people who are not educated. That's the first thing that the government would like to have. It's easy for them to bribe people with 350 and then all these social grants. But it's not easy for them to educate the nation. Which nation will create jobs? I'm not even government employee, but I'm educated. By then I create my own money. I'm hiring people. Self-determination. So they don't see the power of education. You educate the nation, they can stand by themselves and then create their jobs themselves. So they're even failing to create jobs, but they don't want to educate. What's the point then? They are denying us education, they are denying you job opportunities.
But so they're giving us 350.
They're giving us 350. What do you do by 350? Normally, 350 is the money that I use for my lunch. So that's an insult to black community. The 350 that you see today, don't even praise anyone who's giving you that money. It's an insult. Praise someone who will say, tomorrow we have a free education. Because that person is creating a better future for all. So don't be bribed by 350. It's an insult for that man. It doesn't do anything. Even the so-called child grant, whatsoever that comes from the so-called social development department, is an insult to the black community.
Thank you so much, Instructing Council. What we're getting from that is that as a legal representative, we do not see a gun. And in fact, his main argument is that, you know, like most black people who have to confront the criminal justice system, the comrade was abused, legally abused, right? And of course, his family. I want to then go to Lehlohonolo, jumping on Phathu's intervention there. So organizing this protest, this demonstration, in solidarity with the family of Comrade Zukiswa and all black people who have succumbed to state-sanctioned violence, in solidarity with the call by black students waged across the country for decades and decades for free education. Solidarity also with ultimately the national question, right, which is the return of our land. Ultimately all our struggles fall and there. You attend, Organisers thing, you made an open call to artists, for artists to come through, right, and give us and serve us what they feel is a contribution. Ayanda Mabulu heeds the clarion call, like many of the incredible artists. Brings a painting, brings what we are told, it's not a gun. Could be a gun, it could not be a gun. He gets intimidated, victimized, right? Unfortunately, they caught his family and not him because it was two different cars, whatever the story might be. As an artist yourself, right, what did you make of it? And I want to particularly point to the fact that the narrative in the media says students are carrying guns to fight back the police, right? So whatever this weapon, this art piece was, right, how are media and police all of a sudden interested in our safety around guns, as if they do not march up and down poor black townships carrying guns, as if they don't buy pie and Peega and Pick and Pay in full uniform and a gun. So all of a sudden, during a demonstration where a gun was, whatever it was, you know, all of a sudden there's this big hoo-ha about students fighting back. And even if there is that hoo-ha, as an artist yourself, what did you make of Ayanda Mabulu's intervention and consequently the manipulation of that intervention in the media?
Okay, so I'll preach in because it's important, you see. Look, there's a deliberate effort to render artists to be a useless bunch of people in society. You see, the kind of arts that are being advocated for, or the kind of arts that are being supported, you know, is the kind of arts that, as a thinking nation, we should be worried about, first of all, you know. You look at what's on SABC TV, SABC, on ETV, on all these platforms, and well-funded, by the way. You know, there's a lot of money that goes into it. And then you start to wonder, okay, where are we going, you know? That's one of the reasons I don't have a TV, because I feel very patronized when I watch some of these things. It's as if we don't think, or we don't even possess the capacity to think. So if we move from that premise to understand why, as an example, when the entire hip-hop kind of movement started with Bo Africa Bambata, you know, when they were really organizing as a form of resistance into their kind of existence back then, and why that movement had to be hijacked with this so-called I fucked 50 bitches, I have 20 million, you know, that kind of senseless kind of, the senseless kind of art. You then understand that art gives us language, you know, to use, to define our existence, to use, to define our resistance, you know. Like, for instance, if we check the Mabulo piece in its totality, you know, it comes up with what can easily be a very mobilizing kind of statement. He says, another man dies, fuck the police, you know, because we can't keep on begging for our lives when those white people, that place, Senegal and Brackenhurst, were able to shoot in a courtroom and not even a single policeman unleashed a stun grenade. You know, there were rifles there. No one was arrested. No one was even questioned to ask to say, do you have a license for this or not? But because when now you are a black body, you have prepared so carefully and so safely to say, I have this piece that I'm going to present, that's going to be a discourse around Mtumba's death, that's going to be a discourse around black bodies just being available to violence, you know, state violence in its totality. I mean, the entire 350 idea that Brother Thabela is talking about, that's just, you know, that's violence on its own, you know, to say, really, do you expect me to live on 350? That buys, what, 14 beers at Mickey's in a single night, or Bramfontein. And you expect an entire family to exist with that thing. There's 500 billion that just went missing now during COVID. But suddenly we don't have money for education, you know. So what does the symbology, you know, that gets given to us by artists mean, you know, in the revolution? And I think that was also the idea, you know. We can also check the role of song in the struggle, you know. Absolutely. You check the work of Tami Miele with the work he was doing with revolutionary art, the posters that they were doing. How do they contribute, you know, into this entire revolutionary status and propelling people to go forward? So the Mabulo piece must be read in its entirety, in the context that it was presented, and to say, what does it mean? Why did Ayanda need to do what he did, you know? Because, of course, we know art is about making the comfortable uncomfortable and making the uncomfortable comfortable, you know? At which point, you know, who was touched most by that art piece? And then we'll get a sense of why they had to arrest him and why now the narrative to try and justify the violence mitigated against black bodies. To say, yeah, you see, actually we're not dealing with students. Still you know, these are thugs. But if you check, SAPS is the biggest gangster group in this country that is funded and is just even respected by law. I mean, these cats, you go to any police station, it's a sponsor shop, you must buy cold drink. You are buying cold drink every day just to get simple processes to happen. They go to townships. The way they deal with black bodies is so radically different from the way they deal with white bodies. So actually, I think this call of free education must include free education for police, first, and two, we must decolonize their curriculum. You know, they must take serious history and political lessons, these comrades. so that at least they understand that black people are also human, you know. They are not just moving targets that you can easily just shoot at. So I think, yeah, the first question about the Mabulo piece is to say what is art and what is not art, you know. And the theme of the day was artists in revolution, you know. What does it mean? And this is not a new thing with Mabulo, man. We see this thing in protest where the MK cats will be moving, a Johnny would have died and they're going to bury this somebody. They would be having guns there. I don't see anyone being arrested, you know. And even worse, at that point, those guns will be fired. But we even learn from Brother Thabela. This is the artwork, you know. It's not even a gun. We're not dealing with a gun in this instance, you know. So I find it very interesting that, you know, it was nice when Mabulo was portraying Zuma. White people were very nice.
Of course.
But now when he's doing something that they don't find necessarily nice for themselves, you know, now somebody must be arrested. There are all these narratives that are running now to at least try and justify their violence that they continuously mitigate against black bodies. So yeah, that's my immediate thoughts on the fact.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Another man dies.
Fuck the police, man.
Fuck the police.
Like, genuinely.
Another man dies. So Musa, as a social and political activist yourself, apparently, I don't know if it's still called Forest in 2021.
It might have changed.
It might have changed, you know. The 2000s are leading us now. But as a former and current adherent of the cause of black people, which has presently looked like the falling of fees, as an activist, you saw, you know, you're organizing with other comrades on the ground. You then see this artistic intervention by artists. You come through. Talk to me about your engagement, right, with Ayanda's piece, right? Noting that you were understanding that you're coming to stand in solidarity against the violence of the state, right? Structural and otherwise. And you see this piece, you engage it. I mean, you were part of documenting the day, taking pictures, and then you then read the article post the fact as someone who was there, right, on the ground in this protest, as someone who is an artist, as someone who is an activist. What was your reading of that in relation and in connecting it then to, you know, the propaganda of the South African white media?
So, like, in terms of like my interaction with the artwork in itself, like it comes from a point in which I saw the artwork as an extension of Ayanda Mabulu's initial piece, in the sense that another man dies, fuck the police. So that in itself, I saw it as like more of like a performance artwork, in the sense that he was living through the art that he had presented to us. Him carrying the artwork in itself, in which is declared to be a gun, that in itself represented to say, it can't be that a certain part or a certain state security has legitimacy has monopoly over protection of black people, in a sense like supposed protection to black people. So that was my interpretation in terms of like how I viewed that particular artwork. But then when I like read that article, like I was shocked in a sense, like in terms of like the propaganda that was being pushed, in a sense like I was then thinking like this is the same propaganda that was pushed during Marikana when black people were being shot at, and then they were claiming that those people were armed, those people had all sorts of weapons, some of them had guns. So some people were arguing that when police were shooting at unarmed people, some people were shooting back at them in Marikana. So that in itself is not completely divorced in terms of like the incident that took place, in the sense that black people will always attract violence, whether armed or unarmed. Like you'll always be seen as a threat to the system. So it's not a coincidence that like the first forms of like legitimized racism, in a sense like
racism being legislated or legalized was through gun laws, in a sense that black people, how they were like viewing guns, they saw them as something that was inhumane, in a sense that at that point when like the settlers arrived, they were like hunters and gatherers, so like they were using bow and arrows to shoot for livestock or animals and stuff. It was shocking for them to see like such an instrument could just instantly kill an animal. Imagine what that could do to a human body. So black people for quite a number of years were prevented from owning firearms or from arming themselves. Our King Hinter were victims of colonial legislations that prevented them from owning weapons, in a sense that we still see this historical legislation, in the sense like black people, you then like when you own a gun, you're required to go and register it so that the state could be aware that 1 in 2, 3 people own a gun.
There's a bantu with a gun.
Yeah, there's a bantu with a gun. So we need to know how many people in this country have a gun. So that in itself is a historical lineage to apartheid and colonial laws, in a sense that govern this country. So that in itself then expands itself towards the process, in a sense that then black people, when they think of arming themselves or like think of defending themselves, there's already a legislation in place that prevents them from carrying guns as a form of protection, that needs for them to have licenses to carry guns. But then with certain people can easily carry guns around like certain places, as Tony had mentioned, Brackenfell, in Brackenfell, Senegal, white people were easily hoisting guns. Nobody was questioning their legitimacy to say, where are your licenses? Why are you carrying guns in public? You know, to say like the white body is then like humanized, to say it's seen as something that is, it is like a legitimate cry to say, to argue that white people are civilized, so it must be really fucking them up for them to be taking out their guns. So what then happens when black people start arming themselves or wanting to defend themselves? They then push a narrative to say, are they trying to disarm the police, or they're trying to fight back to the police? To then we ask ourselves, to then what then delegitimizes students from like arming themselves? From police are clearly on a rampage to kill students. Like that is the reality of the Mensa. Already another man has died. So that in itself shows that the police are not trying to be careful, or they're not trying to be like holding anyone with kid's glove or trying to negotiate. They're clearly on a war path to like kill students, and that's evidently what's happening. So we can't be naive to those things, to say, oh, the state is doing by all means to protect property or whatever. The state is deliberately like inciting violence against students. We're not being violent. The state is the one that's being violent. We're not the one that's armed or coming with like nyales trying to disrupt protests. All that we've been ever since we started protesting has been nothing but peaceful, you know. And then it's always a contention to then, like, if then the police are adamant, or the state is adamant on trying to make peaceful demonstration inevitable, then there will be then push enabling for us to push towards violence demonstration. Because really there's nothing that's stopping us from meeting the violence that the police is meeting us with. We need to then like make it clear to the state, not to say that we're trying to incite violence or whatever, but then if push comes to shove, as black students in this country, we've been as black people, we've been constantly been victimized, we've constantly been intimidated, arrested, and all those things by the very same police that are supposed to serve and protect us. We will not hesitate in any form or in any way to then try and defend ourselves, as this protest is continually ongoing. So that's clearly our stance.
Let me jump in there, right? One of the art pieces that was then developed at the site of the protest itself, with artists bringing canvas and paint, had a message that says, "Who polices the police?" And I think works beautifully for me with the entire, curation of that space. that, okay, let's say, so we have discounted from Comrade Phathu, Hloni and Musa that it was a complete lie what was pushed through the media. We know why it was pushed, who it serves. Students were not, the headline, there was one headline that said something like, students carrying guns to fight back, right? So we've discounted that, right? I'm interested in going further to then say, okay, the very police who respond to interventions of the people who organize themselves, right, to push back against, you know, the violence of the state. You have been in enough protests to know that, you know, it is so easy to put, I don't even know what it's called, that thing.
Stun grenade.
Stun grenade,
yeah.
And all of those things. We walk around our townships and it is not uncommon to see a gun-carrying man in uniform, right? All of a sudden, they want to have a problem with the presence of an artistic piece at a very curated, clearly curated kind of space, right? So the question, Musa is then raising a thing to that, hang on, even if students were defending themselves, like what stops students and black protesters from not questioning, hey, I think I should, you know, because really, you go to a protest, you anticipate the fact that there's going to be someone who is unlawfully going to, you know, render, go abuse, as our comrade Phathu said, abuse their power. I'm interested in having that conversation, self-defense, and also this question of who polices the police, borrowing from Musa's intervention that even if there were students who are carrying guns, why should students and protesters in this country not carry guns, noting the level of violence we are subjected to? Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, our country, you know, it comes from a very interesting place. So I'll just quickly try and summarize Luazi's thinking, you know, Lusha. So you quickly note that there's two types of colonization in the continent, right? There's the one of settlement and just military domination, you know. And mostly the southern tip of Africa, this is where we have colonies of settlement. This is where you live with the settler, you know, you see them every day. Yeah, you know, and here, you know, they even intervene in your bedroom politics, you know. And the biggest characteristic of this is violence, because this is where the armed struggle was raised to its ultimate conclusion, you know. So we have this culture and the fabric in us that we have not dealt with first as a people of this violence, to a point where the point I'm trying to drive is this. Just on the very Wednesday, by the way, Ankara the king was being buried. So police tried to stop Amabutu from entering the royal grounds. Those comrades charged the police. They charged them. They said, you know what, somebody's going to die today. They literally charged at them. Police didn't do anything. That's the first instance where violence seems to be a language that police seem to understand. Same cats, these white fellows who enter a courtroom and start shooting. Police just stand aside and not do anything. So does that perhaps suggest that even for students, for police to now treat them as human, violence must be mitigated? And it's not violence that's being instigated, it's really self-defense, as you put it. If you think about the Black Panther movement, you know, they say we can't keep on being killed by police, and every time we're begging, please, please don't kill us, please, please. You know, at some point we need to now demand our lives and say, these are our lives. That's why the Black Panther movement was a very serious movement, you know. That's when the police started taking them serious, when they were starting now to defend themselves. And what's shocking to me, Zukiswa, is that for the past week or two, we've seen police in Braamfontein exercise restraint to their ultimate. People will be moving around, burning tires. The most that they have done in 2 weeks is just to moor a water cannon. So it means they are capable of exercising restraint. They just choose not to.
A man didn't have to die for them
Do you understand? Ntumba didn't have to die. So, but because now they were in the media light, you know, people were criticizing them. They exercised restraint. So it means they are capable of doing that. They can do that in Alexander. They can do that in Kufimbaba. But because cameras are not in Alexander, they are going to take out the most that they can do in those people, you know. And I think, just to bring back our brother Patu into the conversation, what's interesting to me, at least from an artistic expression, you know, is to say, what are the confines of artistic expression, you know? To what extent can I express myself artistically and seemingly within the confines of the law, you know?
Yeah, to answer you that question, I will have to also link it with what happened with the artist that we're talking about, who happened to be my client now. So what happened is that for him to have, that's what I'm saying now, I call it an artwork, because it was declared to be an artwork. I've been avoiding to go into deep details about that, but people must accept art the way it is. So without being questioned a lot. So especially, there was no threat. There was no threat about that artwork. And then it's only now when we have to be subjected to arrest, and then we have to give them explanation. We have to prove. We have to come with a certificate. This is an artwork. We have to take the very same police to the studio. And then he was even subjected to say, no, show us where you put that. I said, no, this is a bullshit. Don't. So you are here to verify the address in the studio. So you can't stop abusing your power. It's when he said, no, but you are abusing me. I said, no, I can't abuse you as a policeman to stop and direct you to the scope of your work. You are here to verify. So like what I'm saying now, to say, how can you express your art without fearing that you'll be followed up or will be charged? It's still I can't even come with a solution for now, because we have a bigger problem. I can suggest a solution for people to say, no, this is the way how you must view the artwork. But that's going to be my opinion and my suggestion, because the people up there who have to send the message and then to protect us and then to teach the people like police to say, no, you know what? While you are doing this job, like you said, these people need to be re-educated. So it means maybe that will help. So as for now, I see a lot of artists going to be subjected to a lot of abuse by expressing their artwork. So like whenever, like if we go back to Ayanda, so it's not even the first time. You said white people, they were happy when he was exposing Zuma. It's fine, they were happy. But even our black brother, we must not play clean. Even our black brother, they even go to his studio and then abuse him. So it's not even about a barrel of gun or whatsoever. You can even come with an artwork, which some people, they don't feel like they agree with it or they believe in it. So still you're going to be subjected to abuse. So that's why I'm saying we still have a bigger problem, especially when it comes to you people who do arts. So it means whenever you do art, if I feel like I have a power to oppress your art, I will practice that and then come. So I feel like art, if you don't understand it and if it doesn't sit well with you, just accept it. So and then try the people who understand it to send them to continue sending a message through their artwork.
Sure.
Yes.
So it's like the law depends who's arguing.
Yeah, it depends who's arguing, because to my surprise, even when we go, let me just give you a tip of what happened. We explained, we proved that it was an artwork. To my surprise, I said, no, look, police, let's go to
the studio.
No, not to the studio. Before we go even to the studio, it was 11 o'clock when they were questioning him in Newfield. He called me, Patu, come and then listen, see my statement and stuff like that. I read the statement and said, no, this statement is fine. Sign it, let's go to court. That's where I know I can express myself. Those people, they will not understand me if even I argue with the police about law. So, and then I respect that. For them is to collect evidence, to write a statement, take the file to the court. To the court, we go to the National Prosecution Authority. When we were there, I said, oh, look, this is what my client is charged with. Comment. My view is that this is an artwork, and then with the proof, you don't have a case.
Sure.
So withdraw this.
Yeah.
And then they say, no. Colleague, they are my colleague. I want to talk later about the NPA. NPA, I think, is one of the institutions for now. Some of the people within the NPA, they are resisting to be used. They are resisting not to be political motivated. I would say some of them. I've been working with them because, like in this case, I will tell you more now. Not the case, not the real fact of the case, like things which were happening.
Yeah.
So the decision was made to say no, the charges are withdrawn. Go part 2 with your client and then release the students. To my surprise, when we were in Hillbrow police station, someone felt like no, they don't agree with the decision of the NPA. They said no, let's review this. I said no, where are you getting this part of reviewing it? And who's reviewing it? On what basis? I want to know. I was denied that information, but I was told to say no, go to court tomorrow. You will know a lot in court tomorrow. To my surprise, they never even appeared today. When I go there and ask my colleague, you make a decision and then you overturn it. Just like that. How do you work then? How do I trust you? If ever you are making a decision and then you will be telling me that you have reviewed your own decision, do you want to portray yourself as people who don't know what you're doing? Because that alone, if NPA can, like now, make a decision and then they say, no, we're reviewing. Your own decisions, no, there's no one who's challenging you to say, no, you have made an error. Like we appeal, we review, but in most cases, people who will review and then appeal is the people who are affected by the decision. Say no, but you can't make that decision against me because of 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to a higher court or whatsoever because review and appeal a higher institution to review a decision. So, but in a Ayanda case, they review their own decision, and then when they review, it was not even reviewed legally. So the court docket, it was still stating that this matter has been withdrawn.
Yeah. So
to our surprise, I asked them today, no, but what I'm looking here, it seems like the decision that you took, it was never reviewed. That was just a lie. They said, no, we don't want to comment the law because someone was trying to interfere with our decision. And then they even told me now, oh no, look here, we resist because what you presented to us, we're satisfied. We're satisfied, or no, you have presented a good legal submission for us to withdraw. Sure. And then they listen. So, and then I say, what do we do now? Then they say, no, we're standing with our decision. If ever, whoever is forcing us to overturn our decision, will come in and appeal.
No,
and then for that, I respect them. Because, you can ask.
Oh no, sorry. I was just want to say that back to then the question on sort of police violence and brutality and just the entire system. That if a comrade like with access and a name and these resources is able to, these little loopholes, you just have to then question poor black people and just how vulnerable to these reviews, non-reviews, systems, whether it looks like there's no attorney for you, you come back to court next week, next month, and just the ease at which police in this country get away with absolute rubbish, like the ravaging of our communities at the hands of police is a cause of serious concerns, and we're not having that conversation and making concrete demands, even at the level of what is the role of public policing, right, in this country, right? Is it necessary for police to carry stun grenades to supposedly maintain peace and order when there is a clear evidence just from seeing, like, what do 5,000 people singing Your Solomon really, when it's all said and done, what threat do they pose to 500 police who aren't even there, by the way, when we are stabbing each other in the townships because of, you know, the nature of Black lives, when we are subjecting ourselves to violence, gender and otherwise. But I want to then bring it back, Khoni, to you just as we conclude. You spoke earlier that what I was hearing is that, look, the defunding and the devaluation of the arts industry in this country is very deliberate, right? Because arts gives the people a language, right, of resistance, of hope, of whatever. But art is able to, you know, be that buffer that propels and moves to action. And the nature of the undervaluing of the arts is not something that's a simple, oh no, Nazi just doesn't care, but a really quite a deliberate intervention to keep us demobilized, to keep us unorganized, to keep us in our ignorance and so forth and so on. I want to go back to Artists of the Revolution, right? What was it? Like, what was the thinking? And why was this intervention important?
Okay. Yeah, well, Wednesday, you know, first thing is that it was not an event, you know, something out of the ordinary or what. It was really artists protesting, you know, and protesting in the best way that they know how, which is through artistic medium and artistic expressions, you know. So that was the first part of it, you know, outside of the obvious things to say it was a week since Mr. Mtumba was killed, to try and commemorate his death, also to try and, you know, raise some sort of awareness towards his death and saying people can donate to the family directly, and saying the police that killed him must be held accountable. You know, the obvious things of saying even fees must fall, protest, to rejuvenate it and to invigorate. No? Is that the right word? Sure, English. Sure. So yes, so it was that, you know, it's merely saying that, look, artists are not just, okay, at least a particular group of artists are not just these cats who smoke weed, chill in corners, and just think, you know, these very grand ideas about heaven and what's not heaven and what's, you know, things that mean nothing to anyone who's actually alive, you know. To say that actually artists have a contribution to make and they have something to say. And that's why the piece of Ayanda was treated the way it was treated, because it didn't just, it was not just a piece. It also, you know, brought a particular discourse. Even Wednesday, right there, you know, if you check the videos, the entire idea of saying another man dies, fuck the police, was now a moving momentum, you know. Of course, Linda, if I was a government who doesn't love Black people, and then I'm seeing this artwork now, creating this sort of discourse, I would be worried, Linda. I'll be like, you need to clamp this guy down as soon as possible, you know. And this is just one piece about Ayanda. There was thousands of other pieces that were there. If you check what Aza did, when you check Lelo, what they did, you check Masilo, you know, it then got to a level where now there was a particular posture, you know, which if I were to liken it to anything, if you check the period of the late 60s, the build up to 1976, you'll see a lot of Black consciousness kind of artists, you know, they inspire a revolution. You know, they really inspire with their work. Like Mulifabito will tell you that every night in TOCC, they had poetry nights, they had some sort of event happening, and how people from those poetry nights would just pass by Orlando Police Station chanting the poem, when the revolution comes, and when the revolution comes, Jesus Christ will be found at Corner Brie, and you know, so you can see that the spirit of defiance was very much inspired by these artworks, inspired by these art pieces. So it's not like these cats don't know this thing, you know. There was a reason why those cats had to be cut down, and in 1994, certain artists were even cut down. I mean, ANC went out to even say, no, we no longer need this art now. We're so-called free. And what, yeah, you know, why? So they know the power of the artwork, the power of word, the power of music, and what it can do, you know. So that's why it's, I mean, you are never going to hear about Molefe Pito anywhere, you know, you are never going to hear about Lefifi Tladi, but you can easily hear, you know, they like it when you are just lamenting and you are crying, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But something that says, actually, you don't have to cry.
Yeah.
If you want Izwelako, you can actually make a plan to get Izwelako. As simple as that. It's never going to find even 30 seconds or radio, you know. But if I come and say I have 15 pitches and 25 million, I'm telling you, tomorrow I'll be a millionaire. Simple. With just 15 pitches, 25 million, killed 7 people, slept 25 years in jail. I've never been in a police holding cell at that time, but I'll speak about jail experience, you know, just to, because that's what art does, it allows somebody, just to close, I don't preach a lot.
Yes.
As an example, you know, we can take somebody from rural Lesotho, you know, like Kuti, bring them here, give them 5 albums of these 5 pitches, what culture, you know, and they listen maybe in a month's time. I guarantee you the entire demeanor would have changed. Even how they speak. That's the power of art, you know. There's that power to just even bypass your conscious being and just go into your subconscious, you know.
People were even slapping Ziki from generations in real life.
Do you understand?
Getting angry.
Yeah, people,
yeah.
I mean, people hated Senzo and Jason.
Yeah.
People hated a lot of people who are actually just working on the screen. But that's the power of art. It influences you at that level. You know, that's why, you know, the narrative now to say, no. Currently now these ones want to start a wrong movement, you know. We want artists to come and entertain politicians. Yeah, Monati Mpulaye, you know, all those things, but anything meaningful, it's never going to see the light of day. And if it even tries to surface, that's what they're going to do. They're going to clamp down, they're going to arrest and frustrate. Like you're saying, they withdraw charges. Somebody in government says, no, Kanja never failed you. You can't be seen to condone this thing. Yeah, you know, it can just blow up. Clamp it down, you know. So, yeah, that's me in conclusion.
So really it was re-politicizing and spotlighting the role that arts can and must serve in revolution, that the activists don't have to work alone, community organizers don't have to work alone, artists don't have to, you know what I mean? So how are we, this is a family issue, right? The black family is under siege, and the ways that the black family, historically and otherwise, has been able to surpass certain, you know, historical periods, has been through really understanding that it's a family issue. So I think one of the biggest things for me about this was, it was taking away from this narrative that it's a student struggle, right? And everyone else can just, you know, relax. And Masilo's piece, Makai Batragi, Siring Sichaba, was trying to also speak to that how long are you going, and she even said in one of the lyrics, you will cry until, you know, you bleed at this point, because it's each hashtag, when not all you do is cry until another one you cry, then that we must have a really self-reflective, like, you know, family issue. And of course it's something that we are wanting to not end in Dumba Street, right? But really casting back to say that artists, where are you? Community, where are you? You know, and so thank you for that very important context. I'm going to close with Musa, right? The criminalization, the vilification of activists in this country is reaching, or has reached, quite dangerous levels, right? From assassinations to arrests, right? You are part of a movement yourself with a clarion call, for lack of a better word, said dead or dead, Izobuya, right? And just how that level of resistance, from what Cloney's saying, that it's nice when you're passive also, right? When Senzenina, saying, when we are saying, dead or dead, Lizobuya, when we are saying that at some point the body bleeding on the floor, dead, cannot be a color that's or me anymore. You know what I mean? Then we see how the clampdown of that kind of resistance sort of, we're seeing the threats even to comrades in Olobeni and the assassinations of environmentalists and land activists in this country. As a student, as an activist yourself, right, I want to bring it back to not just Zukiswa's fault, but just the community struggles. You spoke about Marikana, there's countless other examples, right? How do we move in relation to what you were speaking about around, just at ultimately our levels of organization, right? Have to, can I say, mature?
Yeah, definitely.
Have
definitely.
to,
it has to transcend
at some point, right? Yeah. So going back to the fact that we're discounting the propaganda of the media in relation to, the beautiful ways in which we resisted on Wednesday, and just the lies, as the legal eagle has clarified, the narrative that Kroon has clarified, and you as well. The call of fees falling, the call of police violence, the call of, umhlaba wethu, where to?
Yeah, like in terms of criminalization of like protests and like the restriction of activists like right to protest, I think like mostly like it emanates from the fact of that like white people's sentimentalities like become low, in a sense that for instance when we chant dead or dead, like we're not going to seize the struggle until like all white people are dead, in a sense that then it becomes an instance to say we're going to kill like all white people. Then it becomes an instance to say white people feel threatened, and then that's then like the state uses its apparatus through its police to then like arrest us, uses courts to send out interdicts and orders to say you can't say this anymore on social media, you can't protest in this particular place anymore because there's an interdict, because what she was saying then is making certain people uncomfortable. So there's a certain level of comfortability that exists in this country, in a sense that when people then start to demand the impossible, they're then like criminalized and then like vilified, in a sense that you're demanding something which is not as if like you're crazy, So that's saying like people then start becoming like victims of police intimidation. They start become assassinated for the very same things that they're actually fighting for, because the state is not comfortable in terms of like you people, because like at the ultimate end, the disruption of the state, the disruption of white people's comfortabilities. So the minute you start to disturb or disrupt the comfortability of white people, then you're touching the nerve center of this country. Hence we then like experience these antagonisms where then we're vilified, we're arrested, we're cornered, and in all these instances. So with regards to like where to from now, like there needs to be a certain level of unity that exists within like the oppressed people of this country that could then be able to overcome any form of force or state apparatus. For instance, it's totally close to impossible that police will be able to disperse 50,000 people that are mobilizing. Hence then we're asking like Saga is Ichaba, in a sense that where is like the people of this country as this country is burning, in a sense that if we then have a collective unity, they can't arrest us all, they can't shoot us all, and it becomes that part, in a sense that it can't happen that we're a group of 100 people and one of us is arrested. We just look at that.
Sure.
It will never happen if there's that level of unity. So my argument will be then, if there's a certain level of protection, we need to be protecting ourselves. We need to be protecting like fellow activists, because like the reason why we're victims of these things, because like there's the black community, the black family is being undermined and underestimated, to say you're not protected, and this is why then we get touched in a sense, like when a black man is killed and there's no uproar from the black community, because there's no sense of unity or organizing or mobilizing towards our ultimate goals. In a sense, in this instance, could be free education or any other form of community struggles that we're advocating for. So in each and everything that we do, it's important that there's a certain level of unity and conviction to say, and whatever it is that happens, none of us should be arrested. There's no reason for us to be arrested. We can't come as 10,000 and we're retreating as 9,000. You know, where's the rest of the 10,000? Where's the sense of collective accountability to make sure that each and every person that's there, their life is accounted for, or that person is defended against state
Hashtag back to class. Thank you so much, Tony. I'd just like you to close us off, really. What point between Phathu, Musa, and ourselves are we driving home? So we knew that we needed to right the wrongs of, the media spree, undermining art and art expression and rights to protest, and effectively rights to organize, but also then amplifying, right, this cause, right, spotlighting also what we were trying to do with Artists in the Revolution. What is it that those who have stayed with us for 25 minutes that became 50 minutes, if anything else is lost in this entire conversation, or if people want to take bits and pieces and make it what we did not say, what are we leaving? Whoever will watch this and share it, and the media, the very media that ran with the gun story, we are hoping they are going to run with, we gave them content, legal, artistic expression, political intervention, to host what more. What are we leaving? What is essentially the thing that we want to drive home as we close? 2 minutes.
Well, I'll be shocked if they run with it, They still have a narrative to protect. So my only hope is that these 4 Nyana people that you have on social media, I have, at least they can discuss around it. Yeah. They don't have to take our word for it. I mean, we can just easily open it up for them to discuss, and we hear their thoughts about it. But takeaway for me, and this has always been a takeaway for me, is that, it's no one lives in silos, and these problems are never in singularity that way, or these are just student problems. Remember, when students say free education that we can't afford, it's their parents who can afford. It's not actually the student who can afford. It's actually the parent who can afford. So the student is actually assisting the parent to say, hey, I know you can afford me. I mean, just last week you couldn't buy me a pair of shoes. I know for a fact there's no way you have 40,000 when I come from a school of 50 rand a year, and you couldn't even pay that 50 rand a year. Now you have to pay 40,000, So this is really a black problem. It's not a student problem. It's not an artist problem. It's not a lawyer problem. Because now, in a simple way, Brother Phathu will be assisting me tomorrow. And I genuinely can't pay him, And I'm at least hoping, hey, please can you assist me? But these struggles are so interlinked. And if we are not going to transcend, the singularity of it, somebody said black lawyers are not competent. Somebody said black students are crazy to demand free education. If we're not going to see them as interlinked and now start to organize, to say, hey man, as a black person you have problems, even at church, where you think you'll find refuge. Okay, I'm closing. So the biggest takeaway is that we need to ultimately organize at the level of our blackness. It doesn't matter all our problems that we face in individuality and singularities in our smaller Nyana communities. We really need to organize at a black level and I think we're bound to get something at that point at least. Sure.
Thank you so much. Thokosin Dumba is going to be the last one.
Another man dies, fuck the police. It's my favorite artwork now. You know what? It is my favorite artwork.
Thokosin Dumba is going to be the last man in this country, the last black person to succumb to police violence. Fees will fall, the land will return. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but that when does really depend at the level of our collective organizing and commitment to see what our foremothers and forefathers started. Thank you so much to the Forge who have for the past 2 weeks been an ally to the struggle of black students in Johannesburg. Thank you to the...
Okay, that's fine. Just in conclusion, on the legal point, our constitution, it got some attention all over the world to say we have the strongest constitution in the whole world, like the fair one. So, because a lot has been said about human rights. So this say, which says, whenever or wherever there is a conflict between human rights and then property rights, human rights prevail. So no one must be shot in protection of a property.
Yes. Oh.
Listen, you know, you've done it all. Thank you for watching. Share this far and wide. Artisan Revolution, Lizobuya, Sizofunda Ngenkani, Izwe Lethu, Africa Yonke. Thank you.
Thank you.